grouping themselves in the back row. So it's a big hall. It would be nicer if everybody would be closer by. So. No niin, olisikohan sitten. Tää on varmaan tulilennon vielä aloittanut, mutta
kuka sulla oli se yksi moro, mutta tuon nettisivuilla on väärät nimet mun mielestä.
Tuolla oli, kato se Tynjälä.
Onko Tynjälä tullut tilalle vai?
Ei kun Tynjälä on pois.
Eikö onko nyt vitsin oikein?
Joo.
Sitten on kunnossa.
Tulee oikeat nimet seinälle. Sä oot erinäköinen kuin Tero kuitenkin vähän. All right. I think we're gonna start. It's 4:03 and we have the last session of today. Welcome all to the energy panel. We have today a very interesting topic. It's been in the discussion daily throughout the year after Russia started the war in Ukraine and also the energy war against Europe. So we're gonna have a discussion today about energy related topics, and the main focus is gonna be in energy independency and alternative fuels, but sort of the discussion is, let's see where it will lead us, and your questions are of course also welcome. We have a great group of experts here in the panel. So we have me, myself, Arto Nikkanen. I'm the CEO of the energy company here in Lappeenranta called Lappeenranta Energia. So we have electricity distribution, electricity retail, production, water utility, a district heating company. So many aspects of the energy sector are involved in the daily work of mine. And we're gonna have a short round of presentations from all the panelists after Torbjørn's presentation, but I will shortly just tell the names here. So we have Esa Vakkilainen, professor from Lappeenranta University of Technology. Then we have Chief Specialist Juho Korteniemi from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment in Finland. Then we have Torbjørn Hoffstad, Senior Specialist Director from Norwegian Directorate for Civil Protection. And then we have Karen Mari Sandgren from Nordic Energy Connection from Denmark, and she's currently living in Sweden. So we have a great group of experts around the Baltic Sea from energy topics, and a request for you is that we're gonna have a Q&A in the latter part of this session, so please think about questions. What would you like to know about energy-related topics in Baltic Sea region? But first we're gonna have a presentation from Torbjørn Hoffstad regarding new forms of energy and emerging risks. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and also inviting me to talk to you. I'm working for the Norwegian Directorate for Civil Protection and Emergency Planning in Norway. And since there are not too many Norwegians here, I think I will give you a very small taste of what we are doing in our directorate. We are located a little bit south of Oslo, in a small city called Tønsberg. Between 800 and 900 people are working there. Norway is a safe country, but not always. For effective prevention and preparedness, we must have an overview and understanding of risk and vulnerability in a holistic way. We are enhancing cooperation. So many authorities and companies do this within their own field of responsibility. What we do in addition, which differ from other agencies, is overall in enhancing cooperation and coordination to ensure that Norway is a safe and robust society for all. And here I have a small overview of our areas of responsibility. And for you that know TUCUS, this is more or less the same areas where they are working. So we have a quite close relationship to TUCUS. And we are doing a lot of measurements and inspections through our society in Norway. We enhance preparedness towards municipalities, county governors, national authorities, the private sector, and the citizens. So our message to everyone is to think through and plan for what might happen to prevent it from happening or to be prepared if it happens. This illustration is from our campaign targeted to the citizens in 2018. Our advice is for everyone to be prepared for at least 3 days without heat, water, and electricity. So, civil protection concerns all of us, and together we are prepared. And so to the reason why I went here to Lappeenranta. Until a couple of years ago, I was the head of electrical safety in Norway, and we were in some decades ago very afraid of getting physical touch with the electricity. But today we are more, or it's more challenging and also dangerous for a society to be electricity-less. And I think if we are getting electricity-less, then we are very close to an anarchy. We made a perspective for 2030 back in 2016, together with the standardization entity in Norway. That's also representing the international standardization. And we were in touch with more than 50 of the main enterprises in Norway, both governmental and private. And we asked them to look into the crystal ball, how the society would look like in 2030. And it's also written a little small word, speed, on my slide. And more or less all the different perspective that was coming up through all those crystal balls is already installed in the society. So the speed of the technological development is something we have to be very aware of. And if we are looking upon some different energy sources, the Norwegian Veritas and Germanische Lloyds made an energy transfer outlook for 2050, and they concluded that it will be more or less 70% of variable power sources in 2050, and then they were thinking about solar, wind, and hydro, and backup capacity of 30% based on gas and nuclear. And here it's a quite interesting picture where you can see the cost and stability for power production per energy source. And the size of the circles indicates the solid waste from incineration and close down of a power plant. And what you will see is that oil is not that very dangerous when it comes to waste and incineration, and it's also quite cheap to close it down, because you can see that the circle is quite small. But when it comes to the solar, this is a mixture between Norwegian and English, so I'm sorry for that. But the solar, compared with the battery, are very, very expensive. And of course, it's not that very stable either. So this is a quite risky form of energy production. And you will see in the middle of the slide that you have coal, the big red one. That's something that we want to get rid of. And it all came down to nuclear. That's the small green one on the left side. So I think that nuclear is a very stable energy source. It's not that polluting. So we have to have a discussion if we shall move in that direction once more. I know that you here in Finland have a lot of knowledge about nuclear power plants. And from a Norwegian perspective, I think we have to get in touch with you and discuss how we can develop also nuclear power in Norway. As you know, we have a lot of hydro in Norway, and we have had more or less nearly free energy or hydro energy in Norway until the last year. And you can imagine a solar power farm like this, when you are changing all those panels, it will be a lot of waste. And that will also be the same situation when it comes to the wind and the windmill, that when you have to change all the blades, it will be a lot of waste. And another topic is, of course, the distribution of the electricity. So in Norway, we have built, or we have connection, of course, both with Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. And we have also installed power lines to Europe and Great Britain. So in these days, we are producing both oil and gas and hydropower as much as we can to support Europe. And this is a picture from my neighborhood back home, where you have a local production. It's a mixture between wind and solar and battery storage. And when this small farm have achieved their consumption of electricity, then they can sell extra power back to the power distribution company. So I think that will also be something that will be more and more interesting in the future with the local production. And then I will shift the topic to AI, artificial intelligence. And today it's 3 layers of artificial intelligence. The first one was more based on the human intelligence, and then the machine learning came up, and there you have also the pattern recognition that I will speak a little bit more about afterwards. And at least you have the deep learning, where you have neural networks with multiple layers. And when it comes to pattern recognition, we had the professor and psychologic Michael Kosinski at Stanford University that says that artificial intelligence can detect your sexuality and politics just by looking at your face. And that might, in fact, be quite scary. I started my career with the MR machine. I was happy to study both kybernetics and medicine. So I was traveling around the world and training physicians to handle MR machines. And then we also get into projects where we wanted to automate the diagnose settings. And at that time, back in '86, we had a very poor computer capacity. So we were not very specific when we were defining the right diagnosis. But today, we have those neural networks that helps us to be a lot more specific. And the neural networks are almost like the human brain, and we are also using it in voice recognition, especially in hospitals. So the deep learning is based on 3 factors. It's the data itself, the data power, and the algorithms. In 2015, a group of the main companies in the world started something they called OpenAI. And that should be a non-profit research company that aims to develop and direct artificial intelligence in a way that benefits humanity as a whole. OpenAI was created in part because of its founders' existential concern about the potential for catastrophe resulting from careless and misuse of general-purpose AI. And today, we can see that more or less every corner in our society is using and based on the AI technology. And then the last topic, since I'm a regulator by myself, it's very, very difficult to be a regulator when it comes to AI. There will always be internal frictions in big companies, and employees will leave and make startups, new startups. And earlier today, this morning, we were also talking about lack of speed, that regulation will be behind the development, and that combined with poor knowledge among politicians and regulators, that can make the situation quite challenging and also dangerous, I will say. It's easy to get started. You can just have a PC, very cheap to copy. And it boils down to affiliation, loyalty, and at least ethics. And we know that ethics can be very different from one land to another one. And then are standards the solutions? Because those systems has to play together, and without standardized solutions, this type of technology will lose much of its potential. And if you can see at the top of this poster for the film I, Human, it can be a quite a scary one, because it's written first we create the technology, then it recreates us. So if this is a topic that concerns you and you are interested in, I really recommend this film, I, Human. And I will also say that without the standards, we will not have any civil protection. The standards are, in fact, the basis for both trade and collaboration between people. So to sum up, I've been talking about speed, the speed of technology, different power platform, AI, and standardization. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Torbjørn. It was interesting to hear all the topics, and this last one was something I would say really scary if we now jump into the topic of today, that what could be done with AI if it's in the really wrong hands. So the idea today was to discuss energy independency, and now we've seen what will happen if the energy system is partially in wrong hands. But let's start with the short round of introductions, and while you're introducing yourself and your expertise to the audience, so please at the same time let's take this kind of a short warm-up question, that what you think is the most pressing energy issue in the Baltic Sea region at the moment. So let's start from here, please, Karen. I will also sit down, and please prepare for the questions later on.
Thank you very much. And yes, my name is Karen Marie Sandgren. I'm a Danish national, but I live in Stockholm in Sweden. I have been working in the energy sector for close to 15 years. I've been with a TSO, energy tech startup, and I've been in oil and gas and within the diplomacy. But then last winter I started a strategic advisory firm where I offer advice on trends and stakeholders in this very complex landscape that is the energy sector market in the Nordic and Baltics. You could say that I study and interpret the complex movements of the plate tectonics of this exciting sector. I believe that the most pressing energy issue for this region is energy security in every sense of the word. We need to ask ourselves, how do we ensure that we have enough sufficient supplies of the energy that we need, electricity in particular, to meet the demands that our efforts to decarbonize and thus electrify puts forward? How do we, and also at the same time, how do we protect and defend our infrastructure, our power production? I think we can agree that we have exposed our vulnerabilities, both in terms of the needs that we have for stable electricity, our needs to probably reinterpret what sustainable energy system looks like, and that we haven't quite figured it out yet, and at the same time we have also exposed where we are the most vulnerable when it comes to our critical infrastructure. So I think that for this region we have a number of challenges that has to do with how we somehow create a joint narrative about energy security, energy independence, that somehow also includes that we very legitimately have different interests and we have different ideas of what the energy system should consist of and how we protect it. But we also need to keep in mind that the Baltic Sea is looking to be a whole NATO area quite quite soon if the Swedish and Finnish applications go through. And that just creates a whole different geopolitical scene for us, which very much impacts the energy sector. So I think my message is that I think finally we should unite the political departments somehow, the defense, energy and foreign affairs, because otherwise I don't think we're going to quite succeed in doing this. So maybe rephrase the mandate for the armed forces, because that's a key player in securing our energy supplies going forward. Yes, and also one last, I think we need to be very careful that the current alarm that we see and the current urgency for heightened security doesn't undermine our efforts to also make a green transition. These two should not be opposing one another. It should very much be part of our continued journey to aim for a green transition. So that was me. Thank you.
Okay, so I continue from here. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Juho Korteniemi. I'm from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment of Finland. We have energy department in that ministry, so I'm from there. I've been actually in the let's say early years of my career. I get to know quite many control rooms of power plants, but later on I've been mainly concentrating on this energy policy engineering, if I can call it that. Of course, the last months, even let's say a couple of years, have been quite dramatic when it comes to the energy market situation and energy sector in general, mainly in Europe, but also globally. Of course, the next winter, even actually now already, because the winter is coming close, I'm sure that let's say most of the energy administrations and companies and even many citizens are busy now and urgently thinking how they will be warm next winter. And of course that is in a way the most pressing energy question at the moment. But at the same time we have to think of this whole timeline. So the era of natural gas seems to be in the past. We have seen the news, dramatic news from the Baltic Sea actually, how the Nord Stream pipelines are they're basically blown out or blown up, and this will change our landscape dramatically. That how we source our energy and what energy that is. There are huge investments needs in the Europe, in Baltic Sea region during the coming years, and of course then when thinking about innovation, what we were talking in the last session. So now we have to get to the deployment side pretty quickly in the energy field.
Okay, Esa.
Hello everybody, I'm Esa Vakkilainen and I work as a professor here at Lappeenranta at LUT University. LUT University is the biggest educator in the energy field. We graduate from between 60 and 80 energy engineers every year. And just to promote the region, then this Lappeenranta region is one of the most green regions in Finland. So we practically use all renewable energy. Right here in the city we have one of the biggest biomass power plants in the Nordics. We have here close to the city a 100-year-old hydropower plant which originally was the main electricity supplier in the old Finland. We have, if you go take the road, we see numerous windmills running around, and we have in here in the city district heating that provides heat in the city and renewable heat at that. And we have had gas power plants, cogeneration, but because of price of gas, we have kind of almost over this one. And LUT Energy works to kind of find solutions to the Finnish energy problems. My own solutions are mostly in the field of industrial biomass use, but I have been now hammered past half year of question about natural gas usage and how it is going to change. And one of the biggest revenues comes now from power to X, meaning how to use electricity to make renewable transport fuels and renewable chemicals. To me, the biggest question in the Baltic region is that, okay, we are now in the middle of change, middle of greening our electricity, but we are just beginning the state where electricity production must increase. So probably we see doubling or tripling the Finnish electricity production as we start replacing fossil fuel usage with electrification and electrical fuels. But maybe the biggest problem facing the Baltic Sea is how to make smart choices, how to keep our, let's say, possibilities open. So we don't invest too much, we don't invest in the obsolete technologies. We know we have to act fast, we have to act in the, let's say, economic way to our pressing needs, but still we need to think that how to be smart. And I think this, what Torbjørn just said about this artificial intelligence is something that we need to look more. I have in my laboratory right now a visiting professor from Brazil who specializes in artificial intelligence, so let's see what happens in the next year.
Yes, I've already more or less introduced myself, but in addition I can say that I'm also in the board of directors in the International Standardization Organization in Geneva. So that's in fact my main work at the moment. But when it comes to challenges, I've already presented some thoughts. But I think that every modern society is totally dependent on electricity. So without electricity, every modern society will stop and will get problems. So that will be the basis of a modern society. So it's very difficult to discuss other things if you don't have the electricity working. And what's also true is that electrons are not seeing physical borders. So they are traveling around all over the world in networks. So that means that maybe the biggest challenges is preparedness and collaboration. We have to collaborate to get an effective electricity or power network working. And in the Nordic area, we have a quite close relationship between all the Nordic countries. And we have been working quite constantly to try to make the regulations as equal as possible so it can be easier to collaborate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I'll also add my points. I think Karen was maybe speaking, in my opinion, about the biggest challenge. Of course, there are technical challenges and there are different like physical things that need to be considered, but what Karen was mentioning, that somehow we should get the people and the politicians we should raise a little bit higher that instead of considering if there is a large problem with the energy costs with my neighbor or with some people in my country, we should sort of raise a bit higher and think that what are now the best of the bad decisions that we need to make. That I think we cannot make that kind of decisions in the energy system that everybody is only happy. So it's sort of, this is a tough call to change the energy system in 1 year, or if there is a big disruption now, like now is with the Russian energy not being in the system anymore and raising all the prices. So how would we still make wise choices in the long run instead of sort of thinking that what are the voters gonna vote next spring in the Finnish elections? So that's sort of the and for the big statesmen or statespeople, it would require that kind of like a vision that where are we heading instead of trying just to solve the problems of the voters and get the votes in. So I think if somebody would solve that, so then we would be in a nice situation. But that's a hard call and interesting to see what happens. But maybe we could then move on to the next question. And one of the topics was today the energy independency and the first question related to that would be that we could have a short round that what is the solution to this independency when Russia has now cut the energy supplies in the short run, in your opinion, and let's say in 1 year or 12 months period, what would be the solution, let's say, if we look at a bit further, like in 10 years? So please give your opinions on that.
Do I start?
You can continue.
Okay. It's such a good question, and if only that was the only challenge that we were facing, that would be not great. But I mean, we are being hit with a multitude of complex obstacles for us to somehow solve the energy crisis that I hardly know where to start. On the short term, there is not much we can do. I keep saying energy efficiency. Plain and simple, spend less, make sure the demand falls by everybody being involved in very, very sincere measures to reduce our demand for electricity. That is something that we have had different senses of doing in the different countries, and if there is one silver lining to this whole mess, is that I think maybe we're all on board with the fact that energy efficiency is key, because the less we need, the smaller the problem. Then I also think, at least for Sweden, that I'm most familiar with, we could do a lot more to get more effect out of the power production that we have. It needs some changes to some regulation. That means that we could use a whole lot more biomass, for instance, get a lot more out of our heat and power plants. On the longer run, in the longer term, I definitely think that we shouldn't underestimate the effect of offshore wind. And hopefully some of you are aware that there was signed a declaration in Denmark just 2 weeks ago with plans for developing 19.6 gigawatt in the Baltic Sea of offshore wind. That is massive. And it is not as elusive as some would like you to think. Actually, wind power will produce around 91% of the time. So it is a fantastic big potential, but it's also it makes us vulnerable again. But that's what I would like to see in the medium to long shot. And then obviously nuclear power needs to be revisited. What can we do? What can we use with the existing capacity in the different countries? How can we make it safe and secure? And how do we find a sustainable plan for the waste? And also, of course, the markets need to somehow facilitate, I think, these different viewpoints or horizons along the way.
Yes, it's of course difficult to find a silver bullet for this kind of difficult situation. We probably need more than one solution. Thinking about both production and consuming side, this kind of old school thinking. So of course in Finland it's very important. This is in many ways in the hands of companies that we get all possible electricity and energy consumption up and running. Of course, Olkiluoto 3 being here the major issue in Finland, and it seems that there are positive steps taken. Also wind power, there is already this year it has been a massive amount of new wind power, and of course our investment climate, so to say, should be such that also in the coming years, let's say this decade, there would be some positive developments in the new generation capacity investment portfolio. Then the demand side is, of course, if we are taking a look to the next 12 months or a few months, so of course, I mean, we already see some signs of our people, consumers, companies being smart and effective in the sense that there are signs that electricity consumption, for example, is down compared to the last year, as well as there is a massive interest in smart energy use. So following electricity price, being kind of a smart consumer where you, for example, consume more during the night than the day. Maybe when thinking about this in the long run, so hopefully our consumers will get smart also in the long run so that they will continue this investing in this smart consumption also after probably hopefully this crisis will be over. And then many of us probably will get also prosumers so that many are investing in small scale electricity production. Many solutions needed, and let's do our own part, all of us.
We right now are in the middle of transformation, and when you are in the middle of transformation, it's often very difficult to understand that something really great is happening. So basically, if we look in the beginning of 20th century, so 2000, 2005, then hardly any European nation was doing anything. But since we have started investing in renewable energies, we have started to change our society. And now when we were hit by fuel crisis, fuel price crisis, then in the short run there is of course very little that you can do except to suffer, but also through suffering we learn that there are things that we can do that will improve things in the future. So basically in the 70s Europe was hit by the oil crisis, first and second oil crisis. We managed to go through that, and then we started learning from that and decreased our dependency on oil. Now it is time that we learn from our past mistakes or past behavior and think about how to get a Europe that has basically no fossil fuels. So we are then, let's say, more independent and more free to pursue our own interest instead of being a puppet or in the string of fossil fuel producing countries. We are lucky that in Baltic Sea region, I think we are one of the regions in Europe that has been kind of most active in this transformation and building new power plants and being active. So at least I think I feel positive towards the future, and I think we will survive and build a better region for our children.
Yes. If you ask about some quick fixes in a very, very, very close future, I think then we have just to pray to heaven to give us more relative solar and wind power for the next winter. And I think we have to suffer during this winter time. And in Norway we are also talking about more rain, so we can fill up our all over water or hydro plants in Norway. And if we are looking in a little bit longer perspective, I think that one solution could be, as I said in my presentation, with more local production. And I can see there is, in Norway at least, and I think also in a lot of other countries in Europe, a movement towards more local production. And in the next step, as I said, it's no quick fixes, and I think we also have to discuss nuclear power more seriously in the future. And that would also be the situation, despite of the situation in Ukraine, because if we shall fulfill our green changes, we have to, I think it's no way around nuclear power.
Yeah, good answers for the question, and sort of if giving the sort of the simple answer that what a person should do, I think the best option would be to move to Norway, because they have a lot of hydro, they have a lot of oil, they have a lot of gas, and it's all there. So I think that would be the easy way, but maybe we are not all fitting there. So then more seriously, I think we have to continue this path that we've had, and in the longer run. So basically, the investments we've done, we need to speed up, and in our own company, it's been a bit sort of eye-opening that normally when we are doing investment decisions on production capacity, we do a lot of research and planning and thinking through many times, and now this system has changed so much that many of the decisions, instead of taking months or even a year for the planning phase or pre-planning phase, I think we need to squeeze that time to, let's say, weeks, because that's the only way to get the investments going, and that's what we are doing right now. So we see that this winter, as Esa said, we're gonna suffer, but it looks that next winter we're gonna suffer even more. So the fuel situation, at least here in eastern Finland, looks so that the fuel situation for biomass and peat, it's gonna be even more difficult 1 year from now. So we need to make quick decisions to change the system. And next winter, so the only thing what we've been pinpointing to all the persons is that now the security of supply is even more important than any time. Of course, because of the big risks that if your power plant is not working, you're not earning any money, and it's a big risk, but it's also a big risk for the system. So we've been preparing a lot for different things, and for the energy companies, I think that's very important, and maybe we need to also think that what could happen in the worst scenarios and be prepared. So in the short run, that's the only thing, and then we need to put the socks on and the jackets on and lower the temperature of the buildings, so then we can save energy. In the longer run, I think Nordics and Baltic region is gonna be in a good situation, but the hard thing is that now we are seeing tomorrow, actually, if the plan keeps, so Olkiluoto 3 is gonna have maximum power. It's gonna be the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, but that's 13 years late from the original schedule, and I think the building project has taken like 17 years. So one thing what we need to do is that somehow we need to squeeze this time. In Sweden, they are saying that that the transmission line project is 14 years lead time. In Finland, it's 10 years. So if we need to make a transition quickly, somehow, even if we think that there is no big bureaucracy in Baltic Sea region, but somehow it looks like there is, and the NIMBY effect is there. So I think somehow we need to rethink how this democratic system works more efficiently, because if everybody has a say and all the opinions need to be listened for, and the process is too slow. I think if we need to have a new system in place in 10 years, we need to shorten the lead time. So that's something for the politicians to really take a big thought on that. So I think that's important. And now I think we can continue from here. We have more opinions. So
it was very inspirational what you said. No, because Torbjørn talked about speed. You talked about speed as well, because I think speed is of the essence here. Because in this region, we have a lot of beautiful plans and visions and strategies and ideas. And none of that will ever happen if we don't find ways to fix the supply chain issues, fix the issues we have with competence and skilled labor, fix the lead times that you talked about. So the problem, or the question is, in which fora can we do this? And as you also sort of touched upon, can we challenge the democratic principles in all of this? Do we need dictatorship in order to actually make things happen? Or what is the solution here? Because if we have to wait for everybody to, in all of these countries, and also in some sort of regional council, to meet and make some decisions, we just will not make this in time. So what can we do in order to rather quickly fix these problems is what I would like to know. Any ideas?
Yeah, and I need to add that I'm still pro-democracy. And we see how the other kind of a system works. We don't need, actually, you're now in Lappeenranta, it's 20 kilometers east, and you will see a different system. We don't want to go there, that's clear. But how can we, as democratic people, how can we sort of, instead of thinking that this is how our system works, that it's normal that developing a wind power plant takes 10 years. What if we think that the new normal is 5 years and we still can get all the opinions in and make the best decision where everybody can be heard? So that's sort of my call. So just a little addition that I'm not against democracy. So
me too. I'm also very much for democracy.
Juho was continuing. So ministry, please tell how it works.
Yeah, I'm also pro-democracy. This is of course. I'm from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, so our main responsibility is not the permission side, which is often the challenge here. We regulate nuclear and some other things, but that's a bit different issue. But that is for sure. I mean, this is a theme what, for example, European Commission has been proposing actually lately, and we actually, our government has also made proposals to the Parliament on new ways on how to streamline certain processes, especially when it comes to these so-called low-carbon investments, because it's of course difficult to understand how difficult these investments should be when they are trying to make good. But I also know that this is a challenging one. Many investments contain a lot of, let's say, effects which can be difficult to assess and so forth. But this is certainly a theme what actually the politicians in all European countries probably have to think during the next months, because of this need of quite a rapid renewal of our energy system. Then maybe just a little bit out of this this context is that of course I mean we have been talking about this issue of being smart now, so it's really also kind of a challenge for all the society, how we move fast but wisely, and I think this is also for us civil servants to think that we enable wise moves more rapidly than maybe before.
I would like to add another challenge, and the challenge is industry. So basically, high energy prices mean suffering everywhere. And for example, in Finland, we have heard that a lot of the greenhouses will not be producing vegetables and stuff next winter because energy prices are so high that greenhouse production probably won't be, let's say, very competitive. Okay, it's not the big part of the Finnish diet, but it is a sign of things happening. We have also various small companies that have closed down because of the high natural gas prices. For Finland, that is still not a big economic problem, but for Germany it is. So in Germany there is a threat of massive layouts. If the full natural gas price would be right now pressed on the industry, then a lot of chemical industry, almost all fertilizer industry would shut down, and that would mean a massive economic slowdown in the whole Europe. And we don't right now know how to manage this industry transformation. We have industry that is very much fossil fuel dependent right now, and somehow we must kind of try to manage through that. And okay, one thing is government subsidies, but in the long run we have to find some other ways of how to do, for example, ammonia, really, let's say, one of the basic chemicals we use as fertilizers in our agriculture, because in addition to heat, a human needs also something to eat.
Yes, if we are also looking upon what it's possible to do, jumping into the helicopter, and if you are looking upon the situation in the Nordic and Baltic area in general, we have a lot of the really main power platforms in this Nordic area. In Norway we have the hydro, it's quite stable. We have the oil and we have the gas. You have in Sweden and Finland also the nuclear power plants. So if we can collaborate in a totally different way, I think we could have a quite stable system in this Nordic area. And we have a lot of more or smaller technological platforms that are also quite developed here in the Nordic area. And we have a lot of knowledge. So good universities and a lot of studies. So I think we have really a good situation in this Nordic area compared to the rest of Europe and other parts of the world.
Yeah, that's clearly the case that the Nordic and also North European energy production mix is a lot more independent of the fossil fuels. So that's really important to note, and I think that's a good opportunity. Of course, for many industries, it's also a good opportunity that now many competitors that had factories in Russia, they are now closed. So at some industries, it's even been the other way around, and I think for Norwegian oil and gas, it's also been a good opportunity. But now maybe jumping to a bit different topic, and also coming from Torbjørn's presentation, that now we have a lot of these alternative fuels, plans for hydrogen production, plans for different kind of power to X fuels and chemicals, and we've clearly seen that with fossil fuels there's always been the geopolitics. There's been wars in the Middle East, there's been wars in all over the world regarding the energy, and now with these new innovations, what Torbjørn was saying was that for example, artificial intelligence with Google and Facebook, at some point people noticed that, hey, Facebook actually is a tool where you can manipulate people's opinions, and there was certain kind of a risk that was never thought to be over there, and how you can analyze what people are gonna do. But now coming to these alternative fuels, is there any security threat like that? I'm not sure if I'm the expert over there, but does any of you have opinions on that? And should we sort of be aware that we are not gonna run into a different kind of a new issue there? So.
Well, I would still say that the battle for rare earth metals is very relevant to alternative fuels. So that is something that will still be an element. Where are we going to get them from? And as always, they're usually mined somewhere else, somewhere difficult. So that would be a challenge even for the newer fuels. And as I briefly touched upon before, even the supply chain issues that we're having, which makes it very difficult to erect the plants, to get qualified personnel to occupy the plants and work at the plants, or whatever it is that we're going to do. Those are issues that are beyond our control to some extent. So I think we're still challenged.
Yes, we will definitely see a kind of a new kind of landscape for geopolitical energy policy in a way that, as has been mentioned, that this Russian link is now gone, probably for a very long time. So of course that will mean that our partners in energy sector, also in the Baltic state area, will be totally different in the future. And also in many countries this will mean more domestic opportunities. This probably same team is somehow involved in the cybersecurity issue that I think the connectivity was one of the headlines for this discussion as well. So then of course with who we connect, so we probably might have there also some closer partners and some friends with who we can work with to ensure security of energy networks, for example, not only in Finland, for example, or not only in the Baltic Sea region, but more broadly in the world. And of course also unfortunately in that space as well there might be some partners which are not so reliable, a little bit the same as in energy. I must say that this is really tough times. I mean, there have been a lot of disruptions in, for example, in value chains because of COVID, and now we end up in totally new type of value chain disruption because of this current basically war in Ukraine by Russia. So unfortunate times, and hopefully we can get a totally new type of well-working solution in the future.
How about Esa? You have the solution. You have the wisdom is in the Lappeenranta University. So how to solve this in the future? No wars anymore, and everybody is happy.
Yeah, in the past, energy was policy. So we have seen quite a few wars that are basically oil wars, who owns oil reserves. And we have also seen wars that are based on other energy utilities. I think this, let's say, past 30 years that was more of this market openings, and we saw great increase in the international trade. We also kind of believe that this kind of a change doesn't go backwards, but right now I think there is a bit problematic, at least for me personally, because I believe in free markets. There are discussions about, let's say, carbon border taxes in Europe, and cutting down power lines and not supplying your neighbors, and all this kind of, let's say, back to the hut and closing all the windows endorse and believing that that is the way to the happiness. And I think still we should learn more about our neighbors, and I think this kind of forum is very welcome, where we discuss with our, let's say, close friends in the Baltic Sea region of their solutions and introduce our solutions, so we can exchange opinions and maybe form, let's say, better ideas and better final decisions that we could do otherwise.
Yes, we are in fact coming back to collaboration. And I'm also very much believing in collaboration. There's also some areas that we have not been speaking about, and that's transport, both onshore and also offshore, and the whole marine sector. And we can see that there's a quite interesting development in autonomously driven systems. So in Norway we have some ships already that are doing the work totally alone, and we are also some buses that are driving around by itself, and we have also today maybe more electrical vehicles than fossil vehicles in Norway. So I think we are the country that has most electrical vehicle per capita in the world. And that's due to the hydropower, of course, cheap and stable.
Yeah, it's really a big topic also. This is also changing the sort of the need for fossil fuels. So if we can solve the transportation sector, so then that's one sector solved, and then the industry maybe remains. But now I think we could move forward for questions from the audience. So please, now you've heard what we've been discussing, and you can ask whatever you want, but please be active. So we have, let's say, 15 minutes time for questions before ending the panel. So please, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. I will ask a very non-expert question. I will ask you as a consumer of the electricity at home, who is bombarded by messages of please save, it's in your hands. So my question is, how much of the burden of saving us from total energy crisis lies on the consumer's shoulders? Can they really save so much that we will take the burden of the main systems? Is it so that we, simple consumers, if organized, have such power?
Okay, I will give you an official opinion. If you think about the history, so it has been often so that actually the industry has been the kind of the flexible consumer of energy. So the price signal from the market, this is a little bit technical talk now, but the price signal from the wholesale market, the industry, big consumers have been vulnerable to that for quite a long time. But now we have entered to a totally new type of energy era, where actually probably quite many consumers actually should be and can be benefiting from following the energy prices, especially electricity price. In some towns, maybe I don't know about Lappeenranta, but also, for example, district heating price can vary a little bit, at least between, for example, months. Then when going forward, I think one of the key things is that can actually small consumers become smart like before the consumption happens. So that can I, for example, promise to whatever energy service provider that tomorrow I will only take a short shower. Now it works, at least in Finland, so that I can look my app, where is tomorrow's electricity price, and say, hey, wow, there's very cheap electricity at, let's say, 9 p.m. the next day, and then I'll just utilize that price difference. But in the long run, I see that maybe the question is that can I be kind of a proactive consumer in the sense that I actually promise to someone who is bidding in the market that I will work in a certain way in the future. And of course, actually, mostly of this should be automatically taken care of, not in the sense that I actually micromanage my or my family members' shower times. That's impossible in real life, to be honest.
Esa, please continue.
Thanks. I have a kind of this view that how can we empower the consumer? Our, let's say, current market model really doesn't, it's made so that you isolate the consumer from all the changes in energy. You isolate him for all the problems. And then if you kind of do that, then there is no chance that you can make the consumer as flexible, and you can assume that the consumer takes part in the by, let's say, doing things that matter. As an example, a couple of years ago, the Finnish energy price or electricity price was somewhere like 600 euros per megawatt hour, so really high. At the same day, we had a meeting in the old wooden house, Skinnarilla, and that house was heated by electricity. So if we as a university, or I as a university, as a meeting organizer, would have had to pay the electricity price of that building, we wouldn't have been there on that building that day. But because I know that I don't have to pay, and the university doesn't have to pay, because it has a flat rate, then what makes me, take the effort and change the meeting from one place to another place just to save electricity? And this is, I think, the societal big question, that how to, at the same time, kind of help the poor and help the needy and keep the energy prices, reasonable, but at the same time enable the consumers to kind of save electricity. And I kind of agree with Juho that right now I think the biggest help comes from the industry, which is right now willing to kind of do things to make more money.
I just want to add to the points that you're making about turning consumers into aware consumers. I think because we're moving away from abundancy to scarcity, and especially in Sweden, and I think Norway as well, it's just always been ample, fossil-free, cheap energy. So there has never been any awareness among consumers that it might benefit society as a whole or you as an individual if you just cut down on your usage and adapt to the market. But I think even if in the short term, yes or no, perhaps your habits won't necessarily have a major impact. But I think we do need to realize as a society, as individuals, and as the companies operating in it, that we all share a responsibility to somehow contribute to this new energy system that we are developing with the green transition, because it does involve us changing our habits when it comes to both production and consumption of energy. And it's not easy, and it takes a lot of practice, and it won't happen overnight, but I think this is just a wake-up call that will hopefully inspire us all to see that we do make a difference. And that, yes, smart technology can assist us in creating this awareness and new habits. So keep at it, even if it doesn't make a major difference in the short term.
I think in short term we have now seen in Finland, because the price has been so high and some people are affected by the price, but there's been a lot of discussion that also the ones that don't have the direct price signal to reduce their usage. So I think many of them also have done something, because now it looks like, I think there was a statistics from Fingrid that they see between last year and this year like a 10% decrease in the electricity use. Some of it comes from the industry, some of it comes from the let's say consumers, but I think everybody's act counts now when we are in tough times, as we've been discussing here, that somehow we need to suffer, but we reduce that suffering if everybody gets involved, so then the ones suffering the most are not suffering that much. So I think the pricing system works so that if the demand gets lower, then a cheaper electricity price is going to be active in the next hour. So I think in that sense it's important, but I think in the future it's going to change, that the price signal is going to hit all of us a different way than it has been in the past. That's clearly so. I think we had some question in the upper row. Please, we still have time. I think the mic is good so that everybody hears also in the hall. That
Hey, Edwards, PA Energy. In the previous session, there were like questions what the PA Energy can do to help us to get out of this crisis, and it's a really difficult one for all of us, because we're just policy area coordinators, and we have really a role of supporting interreg projects in the region and supporting the conversation between the ministries. But in these times of crisis, the ministries are already talking between each other to develop the LNG terminals and etc. etc. But I wanted to hear from you, what are your thoughts about, actually you're talking a lot about implementing and deploying renewables on the grid, biofuels, but what actually about the energy capture and energy storage? Do you think that we will see more of a kind of California module where you have a big power bank basically trying to power the peak hours, or we're going to just build enough cogenerative plants and nuclear plants to support the energy during the peak hours, etc.?
If I can just start, yes, I personally see an increase in interest in battery storage, and I have been in touch with a handful of companies who are very curious to know what the connection, how you get connected to the distribution grid in Sweden, and I know that Denmark are looking at solutions as well, and we see more and more startups going into this field as well. So I would say the answer is definitely, it's a key component in utilizing the volatility and the flexibility of renewable energy if we connect them to some sort of, big ugly container-sized storage batteries.
I think the biggest storage, it's not a battery, but it's the hydro in all the Nordic countries. So over here it's a bit different kind of a story in that sense, that if there's a lot of wind in the system, then the water is saved, and then the day when there's no wind, then the hydro will back up. But of course, in a place where you don't have that kind of a storage which is very flexible, then you need some other technical solutions. But the need is clearly there for all the networks. So I think that's clearly something that in some form you need to store the electricity or some energy and then transform it to electricity when the renewables are not there. So when it's not, the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. So it's a quite complex task to keep the lights on in the future.
Yeah, I could just continue that. I think it's very important to keep kind of open mind in these low carbon technologies. Even energy storage solutions, as was mentioned, there are plenty of those. You can store energy in batteries, but also in other superconductors and in heat and whatever, several different options, as well as then promoting renewables and probably even nuclear in some countries at the same time. That can be part of the solution as well. In general, I had the pleasure of, last week, I had the pleasure of traveling in the United States with our minister, and I must say that globally, the push for clean energy as a solution to this crisis is very strong. And this will probably take the technology development to the next level. And actually, we should not think in a way that the Baltic Sea states or Europe are somehow frontrunners for sure. There will be a tough competition. And then, therefore, I think this will bring the development forward fast, but we also have to take care of our own business environment to be competitive globally.
Just a quick note on Finnish situation. We have between 100 and 150 megawatt hours of battery capacity right now, and our energy price situation would be completely different if we had somewhere 2,000, 3,000 megawatt hours of battery storage. But right now my question is that I've been wondering and I haven't got an answer is that who would invest? Who would benefit? Because battery storage is kind of a dead end for the economist. You say that invest in battery storage, and then how will it perform in next 10 years? Well, if you invest a really lot, then the electricity price will be flat and you won't earn a penny the whole time. Isn't that going to be great? And then the guys who actually manage the investment say that no, let's not be in this kind of energy storage business because we are not going to make money in the long run. Okay, we can make now money maybe, but then we would have to have, make 30%, 50%, profits for a couple of years before we would invest. And this kind of situation is maybe not hopefully going to last long. So I still think that we need some actor, whether it is, let's say, national grid operator or government-owned company that actually is going to, own and operate and invest in batteries for, let's say, for the society's benefit. So I think we need energy storage, we need more energy storage, but right now the markets really don't respond to this need.
I disagree a little bit, but I know you probably know it better than I do, but it is particularly those type of companies that I've been in touch with who are able to raise a lot of private risk capital, investing in, not producing, but investing in these big batteries and putting them up and, buying and selling off the grid because that's the business model for them. So someone are making money on it.
Yes, and it's also another side of the batteries, and that's the waste situation. It will create a lot of challenges to get rid of them. But I think it will be some batteries installed in combination with local production. I can see also in Norway that we have a lot of electrical ferries at the moment, and there we are also using batteries to charge those. But I think that we also have to think about we have to reduce our use of energy, and I think we have also to think about when during the day we are using the energy. And that was more or less the same situation as we had in the hospitals earlier. As I told you, I was working in the hospital for a lot of years, and we had people with heart problems, and we had to train them in the way of living. And that can be also quite challenging to change your way of living. But that's something I think we are in more or less the same situation in this field right now. We are feeling that it is a chaos, but as I said, that we have a lot of possibilities in the Nordic area. If we come together, then I think we are on a very good platform in this area.
All right, sounds good. There's one last question, and then we're gonna wrap up and let you guys go preparing for the evening activities. So we have one question here in the front, and then that's gonna be the last one. I think we could discuss about this the whole evening because this is so interesting. Let's go.
Thank you. I would like to praise the panel very much. Raul Melk, I'm a retired civil servant now. I started to deal with energy security 20 years ago, one of the first in my country, I think. And from not energy sector position, but from security side. And I'm very happy to hear today a lot of things I agree. When looking back to those 20 years, I think there is one thing we also have to say. A lot of big emotional political mistakes were made during that period, which we now have to pay for. And my question is, I'm lucky to have here Lappeenranta people especially, because you have experience with biomass. And I wondered last years, what is wrong? We have all those attacks against using wood. What is wrong with biomass in energy? I hope first I can have some explanation from here, because everything I read from European, especially from media from the countries who don't have any forests anymore, I don't understand what is happening around biomass. Thank you.
I think this goes for Esa, so I have my own sort of power plant here in place, so maybe Esa is the neutral answer to this, and Esa has been working a lot with this issue. Is it renewable or is it not, and things like that, so please.
Okay, there's kind of two sides for that. So whenever we make any energy policy issues or decisions, then we have to think about economics, we have to think about environment, and we have to think about social acceptance. So how do people feel about? And an example of this is, for example, nuclear power in Germany. So it has, economics, it has environmental performance, but it lacks social acceptance in Germany, and this is why, nuclear power plants in Germany have closed. And we are now discussing the same thing in Europe about using the biomass. So basically, the question is, how do we feel about forests in general? And I think many people have different views on forests, and some, have or actually have such strong feelings that lead to then very strong emotions. And it boils maybe down to these two things, that there are always two groups of people. People who want change and people who want, things to be as they were before. And this is the continuous struggle in society. Do we want to change or do we want to keep things like they were? And many of the people who say that, okay, I want the forest never to change, I want it to be exactly the same as it was before, and this is why you can't utilize it, you can't do anything there, it has to be sacred place, don't touch it. And this kind of, let's say, view is something that now is very, let's say, open and widely adopted in European Union policies, that let's, do things there that help forests to stay forests, and let's not let people utilize them. And this is a good question, and as always, there's the perfect solution. When you do decision about energy policy, then us who work in the technology don't do it. People who work in the, let's say, industry and economics don't do them. People who are in the NGOs and work for social acceptance don't do them. It's the guys in the government who do it, politicians. So we let them do the bad decisions and then we criticize them for the ideas. So I think this is the big problem in the energy policies in the whole Europe, that there are groups that say that, okay, we only should have one specific thing and everybody should do this specific thing, and this will solve everything, and everything other things are, out of the question. And I think this kind of more widely spread, more, let's say, diversity of technology, diversity of solution is maybe the ones that I would go for, but I'm not a politician, so I don't decide.
Okay, I think that was a good ending for our panel, and maybe as a summarization for the discussion. So now in the long run, there's tough times ahead for the next winter, but finally we're gonna end up with a better and more sustainable system. So the future still looks bright. I think we still need to go through these tough times as well, and there's a lot of things to do. Maybe the final sort of the best takeaway that I would take from this panel is that the collaboration is still the key, instead of starting to sort of developing your own national decisions. And I think that was good point that was lifted here, and I think this whole seminar is about that cooperation. So I hope you will have fruitful discussions in the evening if you're heading for the dinner, and hope you enjoy your time here in Lappeenranta. And thanks a lot for the panelists. It was a great pleasure to be moderator here, and thank you, and a big hand for all the experts we had today.